Hey, good morning, everybody. Yes, it is Friday, the 5th of June, 2020, TGIF Friday, and this is a very unusual topics on my mind. Usually, I would be, of course, right there on my computer. I'd be right there on my computer with either this or this as my outlet for a microphone. But because it's Friday, and of course, the opportunities I was given over this past week, Monday, Wednesday, and then yesterday. Well, that opportunity is not really presenting itself right now, if you know what I mean. I mean, right now the time is 6:57 or actually 6:55 in the morning here on this Friday. But I wanted to come on here, and of course, it is TGIF. And of course, on TGIF, thank God it's Friday, I like to do a Topics on My Mind video. And we have a variety of topics we're going to talk about. The first two I want to talk about, right off the bat, of course, as we know, over this past weekend and this past week, somewhat, if not a little, at the end of last week, and it's still going on this week, we have protests, mostly now peaceful ones, but we also had, as a result, a lot of that looting and rioting that was unnecessary. I mean, even the people that protested and everything felt like it was unnecessary and all that. We'll talk about that, as well as what's kind of calming the peace down, and what, as some media has been reporting, has allowed the nation to kind of start to heal a little bit. Like now, things are starting to calm down, because I think we all know what the protesters wanted and what they still want to have. So that's one topic. The second topic, Sega is celebrating an anniversary. It's a milestone. It's a big one. 60 years. We will talk about that. Uh, and number three, we will talk about something that is supposedly, I think it's still on, to premiere on Netflix this month, and that is Transformers War for Cybertron. Yes, that is a new series. They did something with Machinima. What was that service before it shut down? Machina or Mashimaka, something like that. They did something very similar in tone, but you could tell the animation is upped a lot more here, and it is a limited series, so we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about another series making its debut, and of course I've already talked about it, but right now we have 7 episodes, or 8 episodes are revealed, and we're going to talk about how some of them are formatted. We'll talk about the format for the new Pony Life show, and how it's nothing new, how it's basically something that MLP has done before and other shows have done before. I've touched upon that in the last topics on my mind, but we'll touch upon that again so you guys can have a better idea. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, the announcement. We'll also talk about number 5, the announcement that basically the Florida governor has, according to reports, according to ringsidenews.com and various other sources, has made the announcement that more people will be allowed at events, which is kind of good news if you're a wrestling UFC person and maybe even a sports fanatic. You're going to get that. Number 6, of course, I've talked about this before, but it's becoming more finalized as the days go on. The NBA will be performing at Walt Disney World, limited to 22 teams to try to finish off the regular season, and then maybe do a play-in game to see who gets that 8th and final spot. And then within that same last topic, we will talk about the other sport league, which a lot of people are wondering, is it coming back? When is it going to start? And that's MLB, and how they're going to probably structure the direction of how they're going to do the season. Well, the whole world deals with the pandemic and tries to hopefully go beyond it as we progress forward. So, with that said, though, folks, let's get into the topics here and let's go. Okay, guys, so the first topic we're going to go on is basically the announcement that was made over this past week on the news. Basically, the man that, you know, caused this whole situation to occur, from the protests to the riotings, basically people taking advantage of the peaceful protests and stuff. The man that murdered, um, and that's basically no other way to get around it, straight out murdered George Floyd. God be with his family. My condolences. Uh, but yeah, that man, of course, was arrested, as we know. But now the charges that were put against him have been upped, I guess. I'm not somebody that knows anything about law. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I mean, I know a little bit about how certain things work, but not the whole shebang. And basically, I guess the higher the degree in a crime, the more severe it is. And base basically, the individual that the individual that took the life of this innocent man, um, well, his charges have been upped from third to second degree murder. And this has actually, I guess, quelled a little bit of the storm that we're getting, kind of has helped make the protests a little bit more peaceful um, than they have been. But they're still going on, there's no doubt. Um, there were protests going on in Livermore, California yesterday. First time I've heard about it. Protests going on and still in Oakland and all that. But what's funny is, despite all these curfews and everything, um, the protests wasn't that bad. They were very peaceful, and I think that's what the cities want. The cities want to see that, okay, if you can do a protest even at night, if it's going to be peaceful, and I think that's what they're seeing. Now, people worry about, well, what about the rioting and all that? Well, that's what the National Guard has come in for, and I think the moment word got out that Trump was going to have the governors that were doing it, or even himself, bring in the National Guard, if not the military, to excuse me, the military to kind of stop this looting and rioting. You kind of notice it tapered off. Like I think the people behind this, and there are people. There's no doubt there are people behind what's going on that's instigating all the violence and all that. The moment word got out that that was going to happen, that's honestly, I want you to think about it. I want you to notice that the looting and all that stopped, or it started to slow down. And why? Because they knew Trump and the rest of the governors, they're done messing around. So so yeah, basically, you notice that's kind of calmed down. You notice as well that some of the police that have been fired, because believe it or not, there have been some cops during this whole situation that have lost their jobs and everything because of the fact of they're abusing their power. They're acting exactly the way the police force, law enforcement does not want them to act, because they shouldn't be acting that way, and they've lost their jobs because of that. So a lot has been going on, but like I said, the man that committed this crime, the former ex-officer, um, his charges have been upped from third degree to second. And again, that has kind of helped quell a little bit of the storm, helped kind of make the protest, in my opinion, a bit more peaceful. But they were still strong. They were very vocal at times, still very strong. That is until finally another announcement came out that the three other officers that lost their jobs because of this, that were, I guess you could say, accomplices, were also arrested. They were also arrested. I don't know if they were charged with, being an accomplice, and charged with, charged with an association, charged with murder themselves. I don't know. But they were arrested, and they will all stand trial. I know that the people that are protesting, especially on behalf of George Floyd's family, and all that. They want real justice, not just because they know second degree murder that's going to lead to possibly a life sentence, no bail bond in prison kind of deal, maybe. And then for the accomplices, you're probably looking at years in prison or something. But with that said, they want the ultimate punishment, basically, when it comes to criminal action like this. But yeah, as a result, though, the protests, they're still going on. They're probably still going on today as I speak. But they've really kind of quelled themselves. They kind of calmed down a little bit because basically now, in the eyes of a lot of people, and even George Floyd's family, justice is being served. Like, finally, the justice system is doing the right thing. And I think, honestly, that's what a lot of people wanted. It's like, okay, it's one thing to arrest the guy that took this man's life, but what about those officers that stood idly by and let it happen? Those accomplices. What about them? You just gonna let them roam scot free? Well, for a while they did, but not anymore. So yeah, basically that's what's going on. Now, I know a lot of people question whether or not, they're good. Now I know some people are wondering, okay, now that these four men are behind bars, what is the verdict going to be? And honestly, I know that people that are protesting on behalf of Floyd, they want possibly the ultimate punishment for the guy that took his life. It's the same kind of punishment they're thinking about for the man that took the life of the officer here in Newman. So I know they want that. I know they would love. I know in a sense that probably would be satisfaction to a lot of people. But my honest opinion is he's going to get, the way the system works is I think he's going to get a life sentence. No bail, no bond. He's going to get a life sentence. And I think his accomplices are going to get many years in prison, with possibly after a certain time a chance at bail. So that's how I look at it. I mean, honestly, I think they should all serve life in prison. And maybe the accomplices having the chance at bond after like maybe so many years. But the guy that took George Floyd's life, absolutely not. He should just remain and rot behind bars as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, basically, getting back on topic to finish off the first topic. The charges against the man that took George Floyd's life have been upped, from what I understand. And the officers, the ex-officers that stood idly by and let this happen, they have also been charged as part of the crime. And whatever the sentence is going to be for them, I've got a feeling it'll be less severe than what's going to be given to this guy. I don't think anybody could doubt it. So that's about it for the first topic. Let's move on to our second topic. All right, and our second topic is on Sega. As I talked about in a live stream yesterday or the other day, Sega has made the announcement that they're coming out with a Game Gear Micro in 4 different colors. And the 4 different colored Game Gear Micros will have 4 different games each on them, running about $50. Now, if you're a collector, a nostalgic collector, novelty person, and you want to get your hands on these, obviously you can pre-order is what I'm saying, and you can pre-order them at $250, and along with them you can also get a big window. Yes, a big window will be added for free so that you can see a magnified version of the screen, because the screen is 1.15 inches, which is very small. As a matter of fact, I think Rich from Review Tech USA gave an example of how big it is. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can find something as an example to show you. Maybe I won't. Let's see. I know I have something. I had it on hand. I guess I don't. But basically, I'll show you what I mean. It's kind of like this is what they're saying. Kind of like around this. Maybe a bit smaller on the screen. But yeah, it's about that size. And what's being advertised is they're going to provide folks with a big window to magnify that 1.15-inch screen. But the reason I bring up Sega and the reason I also think they did this was not just to get ahead of, let's say, Nintendo when it comes to maybe bringing out a mini version, mini classic version of the portable system, but also to help celebrate the 60th anniversary. Yes, 60 years for Sega. And that's quite a accomplishment. I mean, to be founded in 1960 and to come as far as they have, it's amazing. Now, I don't know how they started out. I'm assuming they started out maybe as a toy company, a game company, like board game company and toy company, kind of like Nintendo. And as time went on, they went into the video game market. And that was more obvious as you got into the mid to late 70s. And if you don't believe me, I would highly recommend checking out History of Video Games by Chris Boers or Chris Neo, Irate Gamer. He did, it looks like a 10-part series, and I think around the middle to later part of that series, he got into the arcade portion of it, where he talked about the various arcade games that showed up around the world in arcades, in bowling alleys, in gas stations all over. And some of them that he mentioned that were being distributed were not just by like Atari and Midway and all that, but also being distributed by the likes of Sega. And I think he touched upon some of those games as well. But yeah, Sega around that time was getting into the video game market. Nintendo was getting into the video game market mostly with the Pong stuff and some arcades. But it was mostly Sega that got into that arcade market, I think, first before Nintendo, as far as I know. Now, and Chris, you could probably correct me if you watch this on that. But anyway, yeah, Sega. Sega, as of yesterday, this weekend, is celebrating 60 years of existence. One of the questions everybody gets asked is, what was your first Sega console? And honestly, my family was primarily two things back in the 80s and the 90s. We were Atari and we were Nintendo. That's what it was. We had the Atari 2600, the original VCS. We had the NES, which was originally my second older sister's system, but became the family system. We, I think, were the first out of all the families, out of the whole family, relatives, cousins, and all that, we were the first to actually get the Super Mario Brothers 3 game, and we got that for Christmas. So we were mostly Atari and Nintendo. Our cousins, on the other hand, were Nintendo and Sega. Mostly our cousins in Hayward that lived a lot closer to our grandparents than we did. They were Nintendo and Atari. I mean, Nintendo and Sega, but mostly got more into Sega. They were kind of like in between. Mainly from what I can understand, as siblings, as the youngest, who's my cousin, was got older, she was handed down the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo or something like that. She was handed down the Nintendo. Well, my cousins had the Sega Genesis, so stuff like that. But yeah, one of the questions everybody's always asked is, what was your first Sega console yourself? And for me, the first one I played, of course, was the Genesis at my cousin's. But as an owner, as someone that owned something Sega-wise, let me show you. This here, underneath the Sega Mini, is, of course, if I can open it, if I can show you, is my Dreamcast. This is the Dreamcast I got back when I lived on my own in Lawrence, Kansas. Place that there. There we go. Just did a little bit. Sorry, just said. But yeah, I bought that Dreamcast back when I was living on my own in Lawrence, Kansas. from a local game shop that was across the street from me. I think it was across the street from me. Yeah, it was. I bought it. It's a little dusty. I have to clean it. But it came with everything. It came with all the accessories. Of course, I had to buy some games. In fact, I think the only games that I bought at the time was Sonic Adventure and I think WWF Attitude, which I sold back, which I had to actually sell back because I needed to get some money at the time. And yeah, it came with a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, let's pull that out. It also came with this. This is the memory card that came with the Dreamcast, which is pretty cool. Yeah, but I ended up getting the Dreamcast, which a lot of people have said is a very underrated system when it comes to gaming because it's actually pretty good. It's one of the first systems at that time, and until of course you watch things like Wrestling with Gaming, you find out that there were other attempts as well. But it was actually from a more legit promoted way. It was the first to really embrace online gaming. In a sense, I mean, yes, you had things like the X brand and some other systems that Wrestling with Gaming and the Gaming Historian have talked about. But like I said, from a more public, more like noticeable, like really promoting this every time they could, the Dreamcast was legitimately, from all that perspective, the first legitimate online gaming system. It wasn't some kind of peripheral that you would add on to play online gaming. It was legitimately the first one. And I think that's what Sega was selling the console on, was the fact that, oh, by the way, you could play online gaming. You don't have to buy no peripheral for it. So that was pretty cool. So I ended up buying that, and then of course, as you saw along the lines, I also bought last year the Sega Genesis Mini, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed having that, which I really enjoy having. But yeah, Sega for them to be around as long as they have is actually pretty good. Now, true, from what I understand, they haven't been around as long as Nintendo, but still, to last 60 years throughout the ups and downs, if you know what I mean, it's really amazing. It's great, and I can see why now they're trying to get back into the console business by working with other manufacturers, not people like At Games or anything like that, but other people that they know have a reputation of doing some good games and all that. So that's just terrific. But yeah, what can I say about that? That is pretty good. That is actually pretty good to hear about for Sega, and maybe this might lead into something more. I mean, rumors have speculated over the years they might try to get back into console gaming, not just nostalgia-wise either. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, Sega celebrating 60 years. Happy 60th to them, and that's all I can say. Let's get on to our that's all I can say on it, though. So let's get on to our third topic. Okay, guys, so number 3 we're going to talk about is a series that, as far as I know, is still scheduled to come out this month. I'm not really sure if it's changed. I could check. But that is, of course, Transformers War for Cybertron on Netflix. And this is a series that, honestly, I will be watching. I cannot wait to see it. Because, of course, as I've mentioned before, I grew up a Transformers fan back in 1984. Long story short, because I've talked about it before, my family plopped me in front of the television because, I was still young, being, of course, 5 years old at the time, just turning 5. You don't really want to, especially living in the Bay Area, you don't want to trust, your kid being outside, by themselves, so... So yeah, basically, let's see. I'm trying to see when it's supposed to debut. It's supposed to debut this year. Let's see. June. It's supposed to come out June this year. I don't know if it's come out just yet. Or anything, so let me see real quickly. Oh, here we go. June 22nd. Supposed. Oh no, that's not it. That's the game that came out. It's supposed to come out this month. So yeah, it's supposed to come out this month. I don't know if it's already out. I have to look online, but yeah, the War for Cybertron series. It was a trilogy series that, like I said, started on Machinima. I think that's what the name was, Machinima, I believe. And yeah, it's a trilogy. It's a trilogy. It's the first. It's a trilogy basically. It's a War for Cybertron trilogy, according to what this says. Let's see. It's got three different. Oh, two. Is it? No, it's two different acts. Okay, according to this, the Prime Wars trilogy. That's what it was. Was an anime series in July of 2018, and the official closing of Machinima in February 2019. They said War for Cybertron Trilogy animated series is set to be produced by Rooster Teeth along with Allspark Animation and Polygon Pictures for release schedule of 2020. So yeah, Rooster Teeth, I guess, is helping out there. I'm not really sure. But yeah, it's coming out, like I said, supposedly this month. And like I said, I'm looking forward to it. And I don't think it's canceled just yet because, or being held back, because as we've been seeing on toy shelves, even at my job, they are selling the War for Cybertron figures. And it says right there, a Netflix original series. And this is of Chromia and Hound. And I plan to get the others as well down the line. But yeah, this apparently is going to be a prequel. It's supposed to take place, I guess, before the acts of before the time of Generation 1. I mean, here's the thing. We've noticed that over the years that Hasbro has tried to really reboot and revamp Transformers from, of course, the live-action films with Michael Bay, and then, of course, the Bumblebee one, which tried to be a hybrid set in the Bayverse, but also be set prelude-wise in the G1 verse. So yeah, they've tried a lot to really keep it going, and as much as we may hate to admit it, they've been successful at what they've been doing. So really happy that I'm really happy that they're still keeping it alive. And obviously, Transformers is a very popular property, a hot property for them, because the toys are still selling. They are still selling in a big way. I mean, you want a good example of this? Last year and into this year, last year ending around this year, or not ending this year, but around last year, ending at the beginning of this year, they had a goal. It wasn't much of a GoFundMe, but it was more of a, it's kind of like a GoFundMe, but it was more like, do you really want this to happen? And that was to make a limited edition, which I think is going to be fully released retail-wise in the future, probably a lot sooner before we know it. And that is of an actual unicorn figure from a Titan perspective. I mean, as I showed you before in one video, you look at the size of my Titan figures that I have, and like I said, you kind of see the size of these guys, and basically that gives you an idea. That kind of gives you the idea of the class that they're putting the Unicorn figure in, but he's supposed to be the biggest out of them all. Bigger than these two, bigger than Devastator, bigger than Scorponok, bigger than Trypticon, any of those in the Titans Returns lines, the Masterpiece lines. He's going to be bigger. He's going to be the biggest. And, you know, they say it's a limited edition, but I think the more they sell, the more Transformers and other merchandise they sell, the more they're going to be like, yeah, we're going to produce more of these Unicron figures because collectors are going to want them. Believe me, they do more and I can get my hands on one, it's going to be displayed. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be displayed. I mean, why wouldn't you want to display something like that? But yeah, it definitely shows you that Hasbro, you know, still looks at Transformers as being basically the foundation, being the heart of the company. Because think about it, they've named a lot of things after Transformers: Allspark Studios, Allspark Animation, you know, and the list could go on. So they give a lot of credit to Transformers for getting them to where they are, and I'm totally cool with that. I'm totally cool with that. Anyway, though, yeah, War for Cybertron is supposed to come out this month. I don't know if it's out already. I have to look, but I'm looking forward to it. And when it starts coming out, you can guarantee I'll be watching it, and I will be reviewing it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to War for Cybertron. Again, it's supposed to be like a prequel. I mean, believe it or not, I saw the Prime Wars trilogy when it came out. Not officially when it came out, but a little afterwards. And I thought it was good. I liked it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do here with War for Cybertron and how they integrate a lot of the characters. I mean, it's like I said in my 10 best ships countdown that I did yesterday. Basically, one of the focuses or semi-focuses is going to be the relationship on Alita 1 and Prime, and how I think this war at Cybertron is kind of straining that relationship. So it's going to be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to it as time goes on. Alright guys, so at number 4 we're going to talk about Pony Life. Yes, I've mentioned this already in a recent Topics on My Mind, but we're going to talk about it here again. Mostly the format it seems that they're going with. Now it seems that some of the episodes are going to be a full 22 minutes, one story, full 22 minutes, but the way they're doing it is they're splitting it in half. That's what they're doing. They're splitting each episode. If it's a full story, they're splitting it in half is what they're doing. Now some of them are going to just be 2 separate mini 11-minute episodes contained in one 22-minute airing. So that's the word I'm looking for. But yeah, some of them are just going to be 2 11-minute mini episodes contained within a 22-minute episode, if you will, itself. And to me, when I look at the fact that Hasbro is using this format for the show, excuse me, but when I look at them using this format for Pony Life, it's not anything new. It's nothing really new. As a matter of fact, if you're a true Hasbro fan, hardcore Hasbro fan, if you're a true MLP fan, especially thanks to Friendship is Magic, you would know that Generation 1 back in the 80s did something similar. Yeah, they did. Generation 1 back in the 80s did something very, very similar. And what did they do? I'll show you what they did. This here, of course, is the complete series of Generation 1. And what I'm talking about of how they did things is like this, and I'll open it up. Right here, I want you to take a look at the way they numbered in parts the first 5-parter, The End of Flood Valley, which was essentially the sequel, the direct sequel, immediately following the '86 movie. I want you to see how they basically numbered it. Look how they numbered that, if you can see it. Okay, they went by 10 parts, right? Well, the reason they went by 10 parts, like I said, the reason they went by 10 parts is because they split each episode into 2 chapters. Yeah, 2 mini chapters, mini episodes. So you would have like End of Flood Valley Part 1 as a whole should just be Part 1. But because they went the mini chapter route, the mini episode route, it was End of Flood Valley Part 1, Part 2 within the span of 1 episode. The same with the following episode, and the one after that, and the one after that, which is why it was in 10 parts. But they did that specifically because they wanted to give people an idea of how the formatting of the series was going to be when it came to showing, showcasing other episodes, other stories. That basically it wasn't just always going to be one episode split into 2 mini parts. Instead, it could be one solo 11-minute short followed by another. And that's basically what you got here with Pony Life. You basically got the same kind of format. And other shows have done this as well. As a matter of fact, I mentioned before, I'll mention it again, Scooby-Doo, back in the early to mid 80s, or early 80s, 83, 84. Mostly in the 84 season, which was the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries. But back then, would do the same thing. It would have basically one episode, it would basically have one whole episode split into 2 mini parts. Like you would have like the season 2 premiere for it called Happy Birthday Scooby-Doo, a whole episode split into 2 parts. Same with Halloween Hassle at Dracula's Castle, split into 2 parts. You kind of get what I'm saying? That's basically the format you're getting here with Pony Life. And I know to some people it may not make sense. Like, why would you go that route? Some shows never did that. Well, that's true. Some shows basically were kind of a hybrid. Some shows would go with a full 30-minute episode, not splitting it into parts or anything like that. And then every once in a while they'd go with the 11-minute short episodes, like one solo episode after another. A good example, in my opinion, one of my favorites, the 1997 101 Dalmatians animated series. Or the classic 1986 to 1991 Gummy Bear series. They did all that, and it worked. And it worked because sometimes it would allow for people to have a break from watching a whole episode non-stop and just be able to relax, watch one, and then watch another if they felt like it. And that's kind of, like I said, what you're getting with Pony Life here. You're getting a format that's totally different. It might be, what I'm trying to say is you're getting a format that might be totally different to people that are new to it, but not entirely. I mean, there are some modern shows nowadays that do that too. Even shows in the past 20, 10, 15 years, like I think Regular Show did it. I'm pretty sure they did. I think Adventure Time may have done it at times. You know, those are popular shows, and they went that route, I believe, and it worked. So, yeah, basically the format for Pony Life, though, when you get down to it, is, you know, it's going to be new to a lot of people, but it's going to be intriguing, because when they go that route, when they start doing this, you might like the first episode, You might like the first 11-minute mini episode, but you may not care for the other, and you don't have to watch that. And then what it does is you don't have to watch that, you just can watch this. And I think it'll work. I think it really will. So, yeah, Pony Life, it's coming out June 13th. I know people like Dr. Wolf are kind of like not too sure about it, but I'm totally cool with it. I'm looking forward to it and cannot wait to see what we get here. Maybe from what I can read into this, it's supposed to be a lot more sillier, a lot more cartoony, kind of a hybrid of being like in Equestria, but being in the old, kind of being a modernist aesthetic, almost very I would say, from a cartoony like perspective, it's a hybrid of Friendship is Magic and Equestria Girls. That's what I'm getting. That's the vibe I'm getting. But more toony, more cartoonish, more Looney Tunes wise. Especially when it may come to gags and all that. That's what I'm looking at. And who knows? We might get certain gags in there. Like, will we get what's known as the lustful melt gag? Where a character melts into a puddle of goo, at the attraction of another character. Who knows? But really looking forward to it. I know some people that are Sparity fans, which is short for Spike and Rarity, they're looking forward to it because rumor is that they might be an item somewhat. We're not really sure. Alright, okay guys, so our fifth topic here. According to ringsidenews.com, it has recently been announced that the Florida governor has announced basically that more people will be allowed to attend certain events, mostly like wrestling, UFC, sporting, you name it. They'll be able to attend it finally. They'll be able to finally, get out and enjoy in person a lot of these events. Now, we know that when it comes to wrestling, WWE and AEW has, and that was just my dog. But like I said, we know that WWE and AEW has basically had to kind of be innovative in how they bring in an audience. Despite how you might feel ill about the methods. I mean, I know some people are not happy with the way WWE is treating some of their recruitment talent, that's being brought in as an audience for the shows. I know they're not too thrilled about that. I know that, some people are kind of mixed about AEW going the route that they're doing by bringing in more talent, bringing in family and friends, and maybe some fans here and there. So to hear that the Florida governor has given the okay for more people to be able to attend events, I think is a good sign, because when you look at states like Florida, Texas, California, and various others that are very more receptible to heat, I think, and basically a lot of the citizens, no offense when I say this, but a lot of the people in the states are more adaptable to becoming immune to things. And everybody's going to become immune, believe me. And again, I say this with no offense, but it seems that depending on the state you live in, your body becomes more immune to symptoms, I should say, viruses and stuff. So obviously the Florida governor sees this, and he's like, okay, I'm going to allow more people to attend events. And I think he sees it, and I think the reason he's making this announcement now is because the summer is like a couple of weeks away, and he realizes that you want heat, and reports are, the sun. I know some people debate this, but there are reports that have come out that scientists have even confirmed that sunlight itself, the rays from the sun, and even the heat kind of helps decrease, if not destroy, the virus. And again, I know some people find that hard to believe. I get that. I understand that. There's no doubt about that. You don't know whether or not that's true. But basically, I think he looks at it that way. Looks at, like I said, Florida being one of those states that's more receptive to something like that. Same with California and Texas and all. So for him to make this announcement is good news for a lot of sporting outlets. Like I said, WWE, UFC, AEW, they'll be able to finally allow more people in as well as charge ticket prices for the events. So it's pretty good news. Now I know some people kind of feel like it's a mistake. The governor of Florida is making a mistake here. He should wait and all that. And I get it. I understand. I get, take your time. Don't rush into anything. But I think a lot of these governors, like this Florida governor, they're like, look, people are going cuckoo already. Do we need any more cuckoo-ness? Let's get them out. Let's get them out there and see what happens. I think here's the thing. I think governors are doing things like this, are making these kind of decisions to see if maybe what the scientists are saying and what others are saying about sunlight and all that, if it's true. They're trying to test. I think they're trying to test that factor. And the reason they're trying to test it is to see whether or not it's true. And if it is, okay, it helps them make the decisions to reopen a lot quicker. If it's not, it'll help them slow down, making the decisions to reopen, and kind of help them decide, okay, it's not working. The theories of all the sunlight and all that, it's not working. So let's take our time. Let's take our time, step by step, and all that. So I think that's another reason they're doing it, is to test the theory. And if the theory's right, then okay, it makes the decisions a lot easier and quicker to make to reopen. If it's not, then they decide they're going to slow it up, take their time, and wait. So yeah, I understand people feel that this is kind of and I know some fans, like I said, I know they feel it's a mixed bag and all that. I get it. But again, I think it's just a theory. Well, it's not a theory, but I think it's a test. I think it really is. But whether that's true, but that's just my opinion, and whether it's true or not, I think this is obviously good news, because it gets people out of the house and allows them to finally attend events. Now here's the thing. Are people automatically gonna come out right off the bat? No, not a lot of people are gonna come out right off the bat, because some of them are still unsure. I'm sure people in Florida pretty much feel the governor is making too quickly of a harsh decision or rash decision in doing this, and that he should take his time. So I'm pretty sure that despite making this announcement, not a lot of people are going to want to go out just yet, because some of those people feel, like I said, the governor is making too rash of a decision right now, or is rushing things too quickly. But whether you look at it that way or not, the announcement was made that basically people will be able to attend events like WWE, AEW, and UFC starting very soon, if not this upcoming week. And I know for a fact, people like Tony Khan, who runs AEW, and Dana White, who runs UFC, this is great news, because at least now they can make an income. They can make something back by selling tickets to these events and draw people back in. So I think obviously it's great news. I know for WWE it's great news, because they got NXT Takeover in your house this Sunday. So whether or not they have actual fans in there or not, it's going to be totally up to what happens. I mean, yes, fans are going to have to turn their attention to the screen to watch the Velveteen Dream Adam Cole match that was taped earlier last week. So that would be the only, I think that would be the only downside maybe. But overall, if you're Tony Khan, you're Dana White, you're Vince McMahon, it's good news. It is really good news. So yeah, the Florida governor made the announcement that more people will be able to go out and attend events like this. And again, you might find it controversial and all that, but hey, at least you got to look at it this way. It's that silver lining. It's that beacon of light at the end of the tunnel, and some people will look at it like that. So to some, if not many, it is good news. Hey guys, so our final topic, I talked about it before, but the NBA is planning to resume play at Walt Disney World. Well, That decision, as of the last live stream I talked about, has become more finalized, and I think they're going to try, if not currently right now, are going to try, as I speak, through conference and meeting, maybe one last conference and meeting, to really ink it and finalize the idea to resume the season at Walt Disney World. Now, the way they plan it out, from what is being talked about and reported, is they're going to have 22 teams come to Walt Disney World, play, and then they're going to have a tournament, which is a 16-team tournament, and it's going to involve all the teams that are basically in the playoff. Some teams have already made the playoffs. They clinched it before this whole thing happened. That caused them to suspend play for a while. So some teams have already been clinched in. Some, basically mostly the number 8 seed and all that, still have to be determined. So there are teams that you would think would not be in the playoff contention that have also been invited to Florida, to Orlando, to finish off the season and possibly get that 8th seed in the tournament for the NBA playoffs. And including, believe it or not, a lot of people around here is going to be happy about this. Sacramento Kings are one of those teams. So yeah, basically that's how, from what I understand, the way it's going to be played out is you're going to have these 22 teams finish up the rest of the season, and then you're going to have a possible play-in game to determine between number 8 and 9 to determine who gets that final spot in the playoffs. Between the two top teams that are the two top teams in that category that are positioned as the top 8 and 9 team, or the teams that are more, eligible for a number 8. That sounds confusing, but that's how they're planning to do it. And I know some people are like, well, it's not the way we were hoping, but it's something. And that is true. It is something. I mean, we have to look back at history, guys, and realize that a lot of things, especially sports-wise, have happened in a way that we are not totally thrilled with. We're not. I remember one year, I don't know if it's the NFL or NBA, I don't know if it was the NBA or if it was the NFL or one of them. They didn't start play till later on because there was a disagreement, there was a strike or something like that. And then after that was settled, they decided to finally resume play, and there you go. But yeah, there have been many times where things have been altered, things have had to be changed up just to, just to try to get something out there, just to get some kind of entertainment, some kind of sporting event out there. So this is, though, despite the fact it may not be the way we want, it is something. So yeah, the NBA, from what I understand, you could look this up as well, and Google it and all that. They plan to, hopefully, as I speak right now, finalize the idea or the plan to make this happen at Walt Disney World. And it looks like they're going to finalize it. It looks like it's going to get a thumbs up, because one of the images they put out there was of the animatronic Mickey and Minnie walk around characters, celebrate, kind of like helping to promote the fact that it's going to indeed happen. But speaking of sporting leagues, Major League Baseball as well is going to possibly be resuming play very, very soon. The latest plan, which looks like to be an agreement by both ends, the players and the union, or players union and the owners and all that, is a more regional stance. Basically, from what we could tell, the teams would play in the regions, basically West, Central, East, and that's how we would probably determine how we're going to get to the playoffs and all that in the World Series. But that's basically the plan. That is the plan right there. And it seems more favorable because of the fact that, like I said, it's regional. The only disadvantage is having to travel. And I think that's what really might be the only disadvantage, but Okay, sorry about that, guys. The battery on my GoPro died. Yeah, I do have an extra battery, but I don't want to have to rush into using it. But like I was saying, basically the decision, as I check stuff here, okay. But basically the decision has been made, as I check things again. Yeah, make sure it's working. Yeah, just checking something, guys. Well, like I said, the decision was made recently or discussed that one of the options, it looks like this is going to be the more favorable option, is basically the MLBA or the MLBPA or the Major League Baseball is going to resume play, but it's going to be done in a more regional situation. Basically, long story short, like I was saying before my battery died on my GoPro there, the way they have it planned out is real simple. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be regional. The only disadvantage is having to travel to play certain teams in that region. But you're looking at like AL West against AL West, AL Cent, And here's the thing. The other thing is they're not going to switch. They're not going to modify it to where, they're going to mix teams from different leagues into different divisions. They're not going to do that. Instead, it's going to be like AL West against AL West. Like even if they put in interleague play, it's going to be AL West against AL West, AL West against NL West. Same thing. NL West against NL West, and NL West against AL West. Same thing with the Central. Same thing with the East. It's all going to be in that way. So that seems to be the more favorable option to going with, and they'll be allowed to play in the home parks, with the exception of no fans. But I think that'll probably change as the year goes on. We'll probably get some fans to attend. As time goes on, they'll start to gradually let them in. So this is actually good news. It really is. And the reason I say they're going to allow fans to gradually come in is because I think what's really going to help motivate them to do it, or to do that, is the fact that you have NASCAR being the first ones. I think at the next, I don't know if it's this race or the next few races coming up, they're going to allow fans to attend again. So that's kind of good to hear for NASCAR. But overall, though, the idea basically is to go a more regional route. You'll still get your playoffs. Hopefully by then things will settle down. Vaccines will start to be distributed or something, or people will become more immune. So by then by the time we get to the playoffs, things should be good, and hopefully, everybody will look back at this season and this year and be like, yeah, 2020 happened, but we're not going to talk about it. That's the one thing I joke about with people is, just imagine, kids looking through the history books, looking through the years and looking at the start of each decade, and all of a sudden they get to this new decade after 2019, and all of a sudden the entire chapter of 2020 is just gone, and they're like, well, what was 2020? We're going from 19 to 2021. What's going on? And just imagine the teacher being like, "Oh, we don't talk about that year. That year never happened. We don't talk about 2020. That never happened. That's nothing. That doesn't exist." Just imagine that. So, just imagine a teacher having to probably do that. Not saying they'll do it, but that's how people feel right now. But overall, I can say that after this year, especially for sporting leagues, I know that the NBA in December, I know Major League Baseball starting next year, I know they're all going to be happy to get back to a regular schedule, because they're going to look back at this and be like, this shouldn't have happened and it won't happen again, kind of deal. But overall, though, when I look at this, when I look at this decision, though, this announcement by MLB to basically, in which again is probably the more favorable way they're going to go, I think it's good. It's not exactly the way we would want, but I think the approach that they're taking, honestly, I think the approach they're taking is they're looking at like college sports and they're realizing, well, yeah, the college teams, they play some schools out of state and all that, but then when it gets into the nitty gritty, they be the more in conference, the more in region. So I think that's the approach they're taking. Major League Baseball is to basically say, look, we'll just go this route where they'll be in region, in conference, and then we'll worry about later on with the playoffs and all that. So, but I think by the time we get to the playoffs and the World Series, we should be fine. We should be okay. But overall, that's the decision. So the NBA, as we speak, possibly is meeting and finalizing to resume the season at Walt Disney World, and with the format they're going to get going. And then Major League Baseball looks like they're on the verge of maybe agreeing and finalizing possibly the regional approach to start the season and go from there. So with that said, that's pretty much going to do it for this TGIF topics on my mind. Sorry about the abrupt interruption. Of course, like I said, my battery died. Like I said, I do have the other battery, but I don't want to rush into using it just yet. And that's all I can say, though. Thank you all for watching. Really appreciate it. Let me know what you guys think of each topic down below, and what your thoughts are on each of them, and how you feel about it. And I will talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care.